All right. Welcome everybody to June's Panvala Town Hall. This is our monthly call where we kind of go over the latest in Panvala. People can ask any questions they have. We can discuss any topics that are top of mind for you. It's basically our monthly touch point to make Panvala keep going. And as far as what we make it keep going, that's what I like to start each call off with, really what we do here. So let me share my screen and dive into this. If you've been to this call before, you've seen this. If you haven't, you might not have seen it, but I like to repeat it every time so people kind of get an idea of what it is that we're doing. So basically, to start off with, what is Panvala? In crypto terms, you can think of it as a protocol treasury. There's a lot of different protocols out there that have a treasury that they use to fund their project. Panvala is kind of like that, except instead of being a treasury for a particular project, it's a treasury that communities can share. We want to share it with as many communities as possible, and we think it gets stronger the more we share it. But in real world terms, if you're not familiar with all the crypto treasuries that are out there, you can think of it as a community managed endowment. If you're familiar with the way like a university works, a lot of them are powered by endowments that are managed by their community of students and alumni who work together to decide how to deploy those resources to fund research, education, life on campus in general. That vibrant student life that so many people are familiar with is funded by a community managed endowment. And we want pretty much any community to be able to tap into something like that by building it from the ground up. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to fund community life with this treasury that we share. So the reason that communities join Panvala and share this thing with us is because it matches their donations. In the near term, that's really the clearest reason to be part of it. If you're raising donations, membership fees, anything like that, we match those donations from Panvala's inflation. We match those at 2x last quarter. That multiplier fluctuates, it's not fixed. The quarter before that, it was 7.5x. Before that, it was 10x. It really just depends on the amount of tokens that are coming out, which is predictable, and then the amount of tokens that come in donations, which is not predictable. And that comparison is what gives us that multiplier. In the long term, the reason to be a part of Panvala is because of what we're trying to do with this thing. We think that Panvala gives communities an economic tool that's on par with corporate equity or national currencies. Really, we see if you see what I see when we look at society, it's a society that's very dominated by political life and by corporate life. And to me, that's really an economic problem. Again, these tools, these economic tools that corporations have and that nations have are very powerful. But then for community life, we just kind of pool our resources together to get things done, which can work, but it doesn't have the same kind of power behind it that those other tools do. And that's what we're trying to use Panvala to be. We think we can elevate community life as a part of our society. So instead of it being a sideshow to the main event of political life and corporate life, we think that community life can be the main event. People coming together to do things they like with the people they like. That's what we're trying to do with this system. So again, we think Panvala's treasury gets stronger the more we share it. So we want to share it with as many communities as possible and to elevate community life across the board. So right now there are 52 communities in the Panvala League, including some of your communities. So thank you for being a part of this thing. We want to continue growing it because again, the more we share it, the stronger it gets. Really when it comes down to sharing something like this with as many communities as possible, it's not an easy thing to do. And I think it requires a particular kind of culture to make it effective. And that's what I call our culture of generosity. Because at the end of the day, like it can't just be about this token, because the value of Panvala isn't in a token, it's in the people that come together to use this thing. It's in you, it's in the communities that you're part of. That's where the value is. So if we're trying to cultivate that value, then you got to be generous. You have to be generous with your help, because at the end of the day, we all benefit when any of the communities that are sharing this thing succeed. Be generous with our shared resources. So the main shared resource that we have is the inflation of the system. So if you try to like hog all of it and then nobody else can benefit from it, that's not a great thing. We want you to use it, but we want you to make sure that other people are getting a benefit that you are as well. Be generous with your presence. So if we're trying to elevate community life, people come together to do things they like with the people they like, a lot of that requires showing up. So be generous with your presence, both for Panvala type things and also the individual communities. If people need people to show up, you kind of show up. And then you be generous with your loyalty, because what we're trying to do is hard. It's not an easy thing. There are going to be bumps along the road as we try to elevate community life together, but we stick together even when it's difficult. So that's what makes this thing work. Because again, if it's just about the token, it's very easy for it to fall apart. If it's about the people, the communities coming together to do something bigger than themselves, that's what makes this thing work. And that's what this culture of generosity helps us do. So that's what we do here. Any questions about that before I move on? And if you've already heard that several times, thank you for allowing me to repeat it once again. All right, if there are no questions, I will keep going. So before I dive into this call's material, I want to share that Slido link that I shared before I started recording again really quick. If there are any questions that you already have or questions that come up while I'm going through this stuff, feel free to put them in the Slido so there's a place for them that I can just check and be like, oh, somebody has a question and answer it. But I'll also try to stop for questions as well. So just trying it out as an experiment to see how it goes. The Slido is there for that sort of thing. All right, so for this month's call, the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the status of the brand refresh project that we've been working on in the marketing and events committee. So they've completed the brand marketing consultants that we brought on board have kind of completed their work on the brand refresh. So we have a lot of the materials that we're going to start rolling out over the next, let's say, 4 to 8 weeks. But this is kind of an example of what it looks like. Basically, there's a new logo for Panvala as a whole and a new token logo, which is just the P in the circle. So they have a lot of materials for us to use in a variety of places on social media as like the cover image, for what shows up in Uniswap. There are mock-ups about how that looks. So we're going to spend the next couple of weeks kind of updating all of that and trying to roll it out in a way that kind of excites people. Because if you like it as much as I do, like I think it conveys what we're trying to do more than the previous materials did. The sense that we're trying to do something that involves humans, that's a little bit like not all sharp edges like this. I like the shirt, but I think it was just designed for a different kind of goal. So we're excited about the new materials, and we're going to start rolling those out soon. And then we're trying to put together a video and a new website that goes along with these materials. And again, all that work is happening in the marketing and events committee. If you want to get more involved in that, that's where that happens. If you don't know how to join a committee, the last weekly memo that I sent out, I think has a link to the form. You can also, I won't give the other way. There's a link to a form, or you could just ping me on Telegram and we'll plug you into the right place. So we definitely want you to be a part of that if you're interested. Any questions about the brand refresh in particular? All right, so the next thing up here is the monthly matching distribution. So if you're familiar with the general cadence of Panvala, it's that quarterly release of inflation from the smart contracts on the system. And then every month, we distribute a piece of that based on the daily staking snapshots over the last month. So we did that in early May. We took daily staking snapshots from April 2nd to April 30th. And then in early May, we distributed the first batch of matching based on that. And then the second batch is now ready to distribute from the staking snapshots that were from April 30th to May 27th. So that's kind of how it works. Those based on the numbers that we take every day from the blockchain, from ZK Sync, from Uniswap, everywhere your PAN tokens live, we give you credit for that, and that determines your matching multiplier for the donation that you already brought in. So we're going to distribute that batch of matching this week. And then after that, the next batch of matching will be around July 2nd, which is when the next 5 weeks of daily snapshots up until the end of the quarter not up until the end of the quarter, basically the next 5 weeks. Those will be able to use to distribute that. And then we'll start daily staking snapshots for the next quarter as well. So by July 2nd, we'll have already gone through our next donation matching round, right? And then once our next donation matching round ends, we'll start the staking for those, for that matching. So that's kind of how it works. There's always staking matters every day from now through the foreseeable future, and it is used to distribute whatever the previous quarter's inflation was. So by July 2nd, we'll have distributed the last piece of April 30th's inflation, and then we'll start for the next quarter as well. So I know there's a lot of moving parts there, but you should have already seen some PAN end up in your community's wallet from the April 30th allocation, and then that's going to happen again this week. If you have any questions about that, we want to make sure that it's as clear as possible. Any questions about the monthly matching distribution? All right. Next up is this quarter's budget recommendation. So for some context, the way that Panvala's governance works is on a quarterly cycle. So it's not like most DAO frameworks that are out there where it's like, hey, when I get something done, just put a proposal out there and you can just access whatever's in some sort of multi-sig for the DAO or whatever. That's not how Panvala works. There are tokens that are locked up in a smart contract that are released on a quarterly basis. So we put together one batch budget proposal each quarter. And if there are no disputes on that proposal, it executes. And if there are disputes, that triggers an on-chain vote. And what we try to do off-chain is to organize ourselves to avoid on-chain votes. We try to talk to each other about what we want to do before anything gets on-chain. And then by the time it ends up on-chain, it's just something that people kind of agree with. So there's no need for an on-chain vote. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. And that's what we've been doing for 10 batches so far. The 11th batch is what I'm describing here in this document. It is very similar to the previous batches with two key differences. So in a couple months ago, I told you about how we're dissolving the Panvala caucus, which if you're not familiar with the Panvala caucus, don't worry about it. If you are familiar with it, it's basically the old version of how individual people participate in Panvala's governance versus communities participating in the Panvala League. There's basically, you can think of it as two different chambers that do their own deliberations and then come together to make things happen on chain. There's communities where each community has a say, and token holders where each individual and their tokens have a say. Those are the two parts of Panvala's governance. So the Token Holders Association is that individual part, and the Token Holders Association is going to submit a recommendation on chain by next Monday. But before we do that, we want the Panvala League and all the communities represented in it to be comfortable with what we're putting in that recommendation. So if you represent one of the 52 communities in Panvala, you have a say over here. All right. So that's what's happening here. This is the draft of this recommendation. And again, this is going to go out in the memo that I send out today. But the main difference is that, again, it used to, every quarter before this, it said the Panvala caucus is doing this. And now it says the Panvala Token Holders Association is doing this because it's a different structure. And then the second thing is that since that there used to be tokens allocated that went directly to the Panvala caucus, which was effectively me determining where the tokens would go from there to compensate different service providers for what they were doing on Panvala. Instead, we're trying to do that directly to the firms that are doing the work. So there are two firms that have been doing most of the work on Panvala. One of those is the Panvala Progress Company, which is basically my company. And then the other is Aktari Tech, which is run by David Aktari, who's done some consulting work on Panvala. Those community pages that you've seen on panvala.com, those were done by Aktari Tech. So basically the tokens that were previously allocated and just saying, hey, this is going to Panvala improvements, those are now explicitly going to those two firms. And then the first match program, which if you've been participating for a while, you've seen how each quarter we try to give even projects on Gitcoin that aren't in Panvala yet, We try to give them some tokens to start with based on how much donations they've brought in Pan that their first time. So that program is being recommended to be phased out. It's a lot of work to actually do, and I think we've gotten most of the benefit that we can get out of it by giving people their first match. Most of the projects that are on Gitcoin have seen Panvala, have heard of it, have received some Pan, and we want them to actually join and be a part of it rather than just getting Pan for existing. So that program is being phased out. Again, if you like that program and you want it to stick around, let's talk about it. And then, yeah, so those are the two main differences in the last proposal. And again, this is all written down. It's going to end up in your email inbox, so you can review this directly. It's going to be posted on the forum by tomorrow, and then submitted on chain over the weekend. So that's the general idea there. Any questions about this quarter's budget recommendation or how the budget process works in Panvala, both off-chain and on-chain? All right. So the next thing on here is the current status of the participation bonuses in Panvala. So there are 3 bonuses that we've talked about in Panvala so far. 2 of them are old and we've been doing them, and 1 of them starts next quarter. So for the community bonuses, that's 2 of those bonuses. One is the coalition bonus, which most of you are already familiar with. Basically a 15% bonus for communities that are part of a coalition. Coalitions are basically groups of communities within Panvala that have some sort of similar aims, some sort of like high likelihood that they can find ways to cooperate with one another. We try to group them together in coalitions and connect them to benefit from each other as much as possible, and then give them a bonus that funds their multi-sig wallet. So that's the coalition bonus. There's a lot of communities that are currently receiving that one, and you can see the full list in this document that again will be in your inbox. And then the second bonus is the new one for next quarter. So this one is also a 15% bonus, but instead of going to some sort of, instead of going to the coalition multisig, this one goes directly to the community itself. And this is for participating in Panvala's leadership. So that's either leading a coalition, which several of you on the call do, or from being a member of one of the committees that do all the stuff that's in this document that I've been going through. So if you actually join a committee, then your community gets a matching bonus. And if your community is in a coalition, then there's a bonus that funds your multi-sig wallet. So those are the 2 community bonuses. I won't read through all these, but I just wanted to put them in one place so people could see like this is the people who are currently earning them and how you can earn them if you want to. And then there's the individual bonus, which is the referral bonus. So this is a bonus of Pan that goes directly to the people who do this particular thing, which is the referring communities that join Panvala and then succeed for 2 quarters in raising donations in Pan. There are 5 referral bonuses since we've been doing the referral program for 2 quarters now. The first ones to qualify have started qualifying because it has to be 2 quarters of success, because we don't just want to bring in communities just to add more logos. We like more logos, but it's really about bringing in communities that actually collect donations in Pan, because that's what we're trying to do together so we can match those from the inflation. So there are 5 referral bonuses that have qualified so far, and those will be distributed. And we want to keep on, if you know of any communities that could benefit from being part of Panvala and that can successfully raise donations in Pan, we want you to earn those bonuses as well. Any questions on the current status of the various participation bonuses that are in Panvala? All right. So the next thing on here is the upcoming coalition calls. So again, there are 5 current coalitions in Panvala, and we try to help them have basically monthly meetings where they can come together and share updates about what's going on in each community and find ways that they can help each other out or benefit from each other's cooperation and spend the pan that ends up in their multi-sig wallet from the bonus that they earn. So there are 2 upcoming coalition calls that I know of. The Future of Work Coalition is meeting on June 11th. The Women-Led Web3 Coalition is meeting on June 17th. And then there are 3 other coalitions that I don't know the date of their next meeting, but we want to help them make that happen. The Regenerative Commons Coalition has been meeting, and I think their last meeting was on May 6th, and it's just the monthly call hasn't been set up. And then the Crypto Art Coalition is trying to set up a monthly call, but it just hasn't gotten scheduled yet. And then the Digital Identity Coalition, I don't know if they're currently trying to set up a call, but again, we want to help every coalition set up that monthly call where they can sync up with what each other are doing and find ways to help each other out is generally the goal of that call. The recommended kind of agenda for these monthly coalition calls is really very similar to the community updates calls that we had earlier, where every community in Panvala had the opportunity to put a slide in a deck and say, hey, this is what we do, this is what we've been doing recently, these are our upcoming events, and these are ways you could help us, putting that sort of thing together. And if you want assistance putting that slide deck together, we're trying to make it as simple as possible. Like, we want to make it to where you don't have to edit any slides. You can just fill out a form with your updates and we'll create the slides for you. Basically, we just want to grease the skids of cooperation. We want to make it as easy as possible for the communities in a coalition to share information with each other. So if anything seems hard about either scheduling your coalition call, getting the agenda set up, getting any slides put together, anything that needs to be done, we want to help you do that because we just want to help you cooperate and get as much value from each other as possible. Anytime you run into anything, always reach out for help, and we want to help you make that happen. Any questions about the upcoming coalition calls?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to let people know on the call that I put a link in the chat to the Regenerative Commons Coalition Telegram group. If anybody wants to kind of keep up with what's going on there or find out when the next meeting is, they can do so in that Telegram group.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love what's been happening in the Regenerative Commons Coalition. I went to a couple of their calls, and there's some really, like, people found out ways they could help each other that they didn't know about. And it's also a coalition that's growing. I believe they added 2 or 3 communities to the coalition since they've been created. I believe Dandelion Collective is now part of it, and Fight Pandemics is now part of it. So that's generally what we want to see. We want to help similar communities, even if they're not that similar, communities that want to work with each other. We want to help that happen. And we want to help them grow and bring in more communities so they can get more and more value from each other, is really what we're trying to do here. Any other questions or comments about the coalition calls? All right. Lastly, the next cycle of Panvala League applications closes this Friday. So if there's been like communities that you've had in mind that should really be part of Panvala, and you want them to be part of Panvala for this next matching round that begins on June 16th, I believe, now's the time to make it happen this week. If there's any community, basically you just make the introduction and then we'll take it from there, give them all the information they need to know, set up a meeting if we need to talk them through and explain how things work. But basically the application deadline is Friday. We already have 5 or 6 applications in. So we'll be growing to 57 or 58 communities at a minimum this month. But we are always looking for more. So if there's communities that you think can benefit from sharing Panvala's inflation, we want to make that happen. And that's all I have for the prepared material for this call. So the remainder of the call is for us to answer any questions that you have about anything Panvala related, or discuss anything you want to discuss Panvala related, about how we can move this thing forward, how we can elevate community life, how we can keep on driving matching funds to as many communities as possible, because it's been working pretty well so far. We've been growing in terms of the number of communities. Communities have been receiving matching, but again, to fulfill the vision of what we're trying to do here. We have to find ways to branch out from the crypto-focused communities that are very heavily represented in Panvala, keep going out from there. Branch out from the people who are currently staking to provide matching for their community, and branch out to other kinds of people who are willing to hold on to assets and participate in this new kind of philanthropy where they can use the inflation from the system, direct that to the communities that they care about, and help that happen for more and more kinds of people. There's definitely a lot of work to do. And if you have any questions or comments about how we get that done, now's the time to discuss that.
I guess I wanted to give other people a chance to ask a question, but I'm curious about the membership committee, and I see like we have the deadline this Friday for the next matching round, but other than that, besides reaching out to people about the deadline, is there any action items for membership committee members coming up that I should know about?
So generally what we try to get the membership committee members to do is to participate in those like introductory calls with the different communities that we try to bring on board. So just for context for people who haven't been involved in the process, like it's like Panvala isn't like an app where you click a button and you become a part of it. What we're trying to do is build something that's more social than that, because what we're trying to build up at the end of the day is negotiating power. It's these communities coming together to both share Panvala's treasury, but at the end of the day, bring in resources from like companies, corporate sponsors, et cetera. And by joining forces with more and more communities, building up the negotiating power to do that. So it's not like it's not just a sign up process. It's explaining to people what they're joining and what we do and things like that. So really it's most of what the membership committee members do is join those calls. Like they get scheduled, they get a notification every time one of those things gets scheduled, and they show up to some of those meetings. And then when we do like proactive outreach to potential communities that can be part of Panvala, we try to CC the membership committee members so they have visibility into that and they can contribute when it makes sense for them to do so. So I'm not sure, Ashley, when you joined the membership committee and if I added you to that mailing list, but if you are on that mailing list, you should have maybe too many emails from that process. But if you're not, I can make sure that you're on there.
No, I am. I've been seeing them. And then
Awesome.
through those emails, would I also find the list of members to CC during outreach process, or how would I get the list of members to add to the emails?
So you don't need the list necessarily. You can just use the mailing list. So if, it's membership@panvala.com. If you can do any outreach you want, and if you just CC membership@panvala.com, everybody else who's interested in participating in that process will see that. So that's generally do whatever you want, and like just keep people in the loop, and that's how the membership committee works.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem. Any last questions or comments before we all break? All right. If not, thanks for coming, everybody, and especially thanks for being part of Panvala. What we're trying to do here is, in my opinion, a very important thing. There are so many people out there that are frustrated or unhappy in some way or another, because when they see the world the way it is, they don't see any lever to make it more like the world they want to live in. They don't see a way in our political systems to make things happen. They don't see a way in our profit-obsessed economy to make things happen. And when it comes to community life, it's really hard to get things going if you're just pooling your resources together to make it happen. And what we're trying to do is to connect as many communities as possible to this new way of doing community life, this new way of funding what we do with the people, this new way of funding the things that we like with the people we like is really what we're trying to do. And if there were more ways to drive resources to that part of our society, the way so many resources get directed to companies and so many resources get directed to politics, I think there would be just a lot more of that kind of activity, a lot more happy people, a lot more people seeing the ways to make the impact that they care about, because they don't have to win an election. They don't have to engage in winner takes all politics. They don't have to optimize their quarterly earnings reports, because they're just coming together with the people they like, doing the things that they like, and they found a way to drive more resources to that. If we succeed in doing that, I think is going to be a really big deal. And we've already kind of shown a path to make that happen. We've been matching donations from our communities for over a year, and at rates that a lot of people would be pretty impressed by. And if we can show that it's not just a thing confined to crypto, if we can show that it's a thing that both can work really well in crypto, but also for other kinds of communities as well, hopefully that switch flips in people's heads. They see another way, a way that doesn't seem so like rigid and profit focused as the other things that are out there. So that's why I really appreciate the fact that you're participating in this thing, because if we succeed, I think we're going to make a lot of people a lot happier than they are today. So thanks for being part of Panvala. Thanks for coming, and looking forward to elevating community life with all of you.
Thanks, Neon.
Thanks. Have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Nan.
Bye.